As Anthony Fauci said this week.
Well, let me just say I am on the coronavirus task force, so I'm happy to answer a few of those questions. I can't comment on the schedule of briefings. I'm not aware of that. The president specifically put in his speech encouraging Americans to wear masks, social distance, and hygiene, because he's the president of the United States and people are not around him close, and the people who are around are tested. I don't think he needs to wear a mask, but the rest of us absolutely, and the president supports wearing masks. I was at the House this week testifying. I'm sure you saw my picture with Chair Powell on the Wall Street Journal. I never thought we'd have a picture like that. But yes, we are encouraging Americans to wear masks. Now, unlike last time, as I've said, and yes, I realize the numbers of cases, we're monitoring that carefully. We're monitoring the hospital capacity. Let me just say I've been briefed on where we are on vaccines and virals. I'm very encouraged. We'll have things by the end of the year. So yes, we're going to be careful. And I wouldn't say reverse. I would say the states appropriately are pausing certain things like bars and gyms, which obviously are the more contagious types of things. And I think the states are acting appropriately.
Mandating masks is now requiring them.
It's coming back extremely strong. We did the right thing. We closed it up. We would have lost millions of lives. We've done a historic thing. We would have lost millions of lives. And now we're opening it up, and it's opening up far faster than anybody thought even possible.
Until this president faces what's going on in our country, our economy is going to remain at risk. Today's report is positive news, and I'm thankful for it, for real. But make no mistake, we're still in a deep, deep job hole.
Let's take a closer look at that June jobs report. 4.8 million jobs added last month, a record much higher than what economists have.
TV. We're paying less for their favorite channels with Sling.
Adriana Diaz reports.
The nearly 5 million jobs gained sets the record for the most jobs ever added in a single month. And after nearly 20 million jobs were lost in the shutdown, that's welcome news. But there's a catch, says labor economist Diane Swank.
Because we already know from much more real-time data that the layoffs have already started and places have already had to close down. Restaurant, bars, gyms, and many of the hot spots.
The numbers were taken before recent COVID surges pushed many states to relapse.
Gelling action also helps.
Malone reports some economists still see tough times ahead for American workers.
American companies added nearly 5 million people to their payrolls in June. Positive news sent President Trump to the White House briefing room to tout the numbers.
This is the largest monthly jobs gain in the history of our country.
It was the second straight month of job growth after the coronavirus shutdowns wiped out more than 20 million jobs in April.
Today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back.
Unemployment fell to 11% after peaking near 15%.
Americans who lost their jobs during the shutdowns now back at work. The president eager to relay those record-breaking jobs numbers to the American people.
Today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back. It's coming back extremely strong.
But critics like presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden were quick to point out that many states have started rolling back or pausing plans to reopen parts of their economies this month, too.
This report measures job gains as of June the 12th. In the days since, we've seen cases spiking around the country. Some businesses closed down again.
The rollback sending employees like Dallas bartender Randy Heitzman, who returned to work in May, back to the unemployment line.
I got furloughed with almost no notice from my job. This second round, I think, is going to be more stressful.
Layoffs persistently high. For the 15th straight week, more than 1 million Americans have filed new claims for unemployment benefits. We saw long lines at this unemployment office in Oklahoma today.
Right. Dr. Fauci is a physician and scientist, and his primary motivation is to extinguish this pandemic. The president, on the other hand, is running for re-election, and his primary motivation is to get re-elected. Notice that the president really emphasizes how widely the United States is opening up, and he's doing that at a time when multiple states that opened up too early, Florida, Arizona, Texas, are seeing this astonishing surge in the number of cases, yet the president continues to tout the opening of the country. So we're seeing really the divergence of motivations. The president's motivation is to get elected. Dr. Fauci's motivation is to put the pandemic away. And you see that now in stark relief.
Since then, Colorado officials delivered 10,000 kits to keep the site open. Today, the National Institutes of Health said the goal is to have 1 million rapid on-site tests per day around September, so schools and sporting events can reopen. Lester?
All right, Gabe Gutierrez tonight, thank you. A surprisingly large drop in the unemployment rate last month, just over 11%, but as
the powerful held accountable.
New mattress, you're going to see an immediate difference when you lay on it.
What are businesses to do? What are people to do who are thinking, okay, am I going to be open? Am I going to be closed? Am I going to have a job? Or am I not? I mean, what effect does this uncertainty have on what we face?
I mean, the first thing is there's a way to get much more, get many more people tested with the capacity we have. It's this idea of pooling tests. And Dr. Fauci and others have been announcing, talking about this in the last week. We need to move ahead with this, just full steam ahead. And then we also need to recognize that some of the sophisticated players here, like the Stanford Medical School and Cornell University, what are they doing? They're saying, we're going to test everybody when we reopen because that's the way to keep ourselves safe. And in their case, they can just ignore what the CDC says, which is really, bizarrely unhelpful. They just ignore it. But unfortunately, far too many people are listening to the CDC on this. And the CDC says, don't test.
So you put yourselves, Paul Romer, in the shoes of someone, say, who owns a small business or someone who's hoping they can go to work or stay at work. And they're trying to make a calculated decision. I want to go back to work. I want to open my business, but I've got to be worried about health. How are they able to make these decisions with any sense of certainty right now?
Well, it's really tough when the sophisticated players are saying you can't rely on the CDC. So it's very hard, I think, for anybody to know what to do. I'll tell you what I do. I mean, one, fresh air is very good. Enclosed spaces with people who might be infectious, very bad.
So you're speaking of restaurants and any kind of work that can be done outside. And of course, not all work can be done that way. Another thing I want to ask you about, Paul Romer, is the fact that we do see in these numbers that once again, individuals, people of color, people with less than a college education, are facing a much tougher job picture than everybody else. Is this just something we are destined to have with us for a long time to come?
On the current course, the CBO is predicting that we'll get back to where we were before where we would have been if the pandemic hadn't hit. We'll get back there by 2028. So if we keep doing what we're doing, it's going to be a very long, slow recovery. And the people who are in the most disadvantaged will be the ones who suffer the most, and their kids, because their kids are not going to be able to get an education this fall.
That have shut down and won't reopen now because of these new infections. But you could have businesses that didn't even close before because those places were not affected by the virus, and those workers, unfortunately, could join the ranks of the unemployed.
Let's talk about the more important thing that people like you and I think about, and that is structurally what has happened to the job market. How much has been destroyed that won't come back when we return to some version of normal? The Congressional Budget Office talks about not getting back to these particularly low unemployment rates that we were at before coronavirus until 2030. That seems uniquely pessimistic. A lot of people are talking about 2 to 3 to 4 years. What does that look like, long-term return to normal?
The best forecasts I've seen have been like 2 or 3 years. I think that the CBO is extremely pessimistic in that regard. But what we're looking for, Ali, is something that economists are now calling scarring. In other words, We had a lot of people go on temporary layoff. A lot will come back. But for some of these places, the business may not be there anymore. The job may not be there anymore. On the plus side, there may be new jobs if people continue to get more stuff online rather than in retail stores. But some of those retail stores, they may never reopen. Some of the restaurants, they can't survive at 50% capacity until we go back to 100%. So there's going to be scarring in the economy, the extent of which I think the CBO may be too pessimistic, but the idea that we're going back to the way it was a couple months ago in short order is almost certainly too optimistic.